All right, what's up? What's up? This is the third installment of Inside the Vibe. I'm here with Janine, and we're just gonna jump straight into it. Introduce yourself. What's up? Talk to the people.
All right, guys. My name is Janine Caratini Hatcher, known on the internet as Bonita. I have, I would say, I am a Renaissance woman in a sense. I have been in the technology field for the last 5, 6 years now. I currently work in education. I have experience also in media. Outside of that, I have also been a film photographer for the last 7 years. I have traveled the world, probably documented everything from nature to music festivals to political elections and also protests. Anything that is basically around human life and what that entails. That's what I do. I also DJ when from time to time the last couple of years, and that's also a great outlet. I think anything I'm able to touch, that's my medium.
Got it. Got it. It's a lot you got going on. So photographer, DJ, activist. With your hands in so many things, like how do you define what success looks like to you?
I feel like at first, success was definitely a materialistic based need. It was something that it was portrayed to me as more of a you have to have the big house and the lots of money and the lots of clothes and stuff like that, which is great. But now at this adult age, I would say success is honestly a mindset. It's like a center of peace. Being able to just realize no matter at the end of the day, am I content? Am I sitting here and am I at peace? Am I healthy? And I have roof over my head. It's just being able to appreciate the little things.
So content. You touched on the word content. Do you think content can at sometimes it can cause our definition of success to change? Then is that always good? I know people want to feel comfortable. You want to get to a place where I'm working towards something, but I'm content with where I am in the process, but I want more. Is like, what do you feel about that kind of balancing act between being okay with where you are and still chasing that kind of never ending cycle of like forward progression and success?
I that's a really that's something that I always think about. Like being able to know like when am I too comfortable or when I know that and I feel like that's the overachiever in me. I know that there's right now this is not my final destination. I'm like I look at my age all the time. I'm like, I'm young. I haven't even touched the center of like what it could be. But I know that with time, and I've let go the idea of having control of that. So a lot of times I wouldn't say be comfortable with where I'm at right now, but going just appreciating the journey presently. And I think that's what's easy, and I feel like that's what it took a while for me to embrace. Just knowing that okay, I know that this is not going to last forever, this moment, so I might as well take in for what it is now. And that's where the content is. Because a lot of times we beat ourselves up and be like, we're not where we're supposed to be, or we just want to be on the opposite side of where it can be, and just be like content with ourselves. And I think that's what's important is that we just know that we are going to get there, but we should just appreciate the journey right now before we don't have it anymore.
So, do you think there are specific things, experiences that you went through or are going through that help you define like what success is to you currently?
Absolutely. I feel like I think about that all the time. I feel like that's a lot of those. There's a lot of times where I've sat through in my mind and I replayed the ideas of success. And in a moment, it was a moment of success. But then I realized looking back and going to it, it was just temporary. It was just like a moment. And it didn't necessarily, I knew like the feeling didn't last as long as I thought it would. And then that's when I realized like this is something where it's temporary. Same with failure. A lot of times with failure, I am my biggest critic. So when I have taken that shot, it wasn't even the outside noise that got to me. It was me because it was like I'm the one in the body, and it's like you always wanted to push you to know better. But I've learned over the years to be kinder to myself, especially in those times of failure, because we have to know that that's it's impossible for as a human to not like experience that. And I think that's what we have to realize, that we have a lot in common. We all been through those failure moments. It may not be everybody else like the same as everyone else, but it's those feelings of like when you feel like you didn't feel like you showed up as your best self, or you feel like you could have been better, or if you just showed up more prepared. But once we know that those are temporary, just like success is temporary, then we keep going.
So, being your own biggest critic, I feel like a lot of us do that. I'm very hard on myself. I feel like it's a common theme in any area of working towards being like a master and expert at a craft. There is, I think, a healthy portion of like that spectrum to be very hard on yourself because it kind of pushes you, right? But I think when you continue and get to a certain kind of area, it can become unhealthy. Do you think is it possible for yourself, and you can speak in general for anyone from your experiences, to kind of have multiple unhealthy processes in working towards success? Like, do you think you can have those and have prolonged success? Not just in an instant, but over a span of time. Like, I'm working, I'm using these things, and I know it's kind of eating at me, but I'm still having success. Like, do you
Yeah.
think it's possible for you?
Absolutely. I feel like we don't admit to ourselves enough that we have those unhealthy habits that push us. It's the times, let's say, like a perfect example for us, an unhealthy habit. We don't get enough of night sleep.
Yeah, I don't see that.
But you know why? Because we take over in our thoughts and we come from work and we're like, we're going to put the extra time in our stuff and what makes us happy and put in the time to build and what's the next move for us. That's an unhealthy habit, but we ignore it. I feel like we pick and choose our vices and what that entails. So a lot of times we absolutely we do. And I feel like we have to just, if we sit there and admit that, then we know that sometimes it's like we're going to work hand in hand with them.
It's almost like this wormhole of comparison, and I want to see what this person's doing. They're doing this. I need that. And we're just getting away from who we are and not really working and being our better selves because we're comparing ourselves to things that aren't real.
Right. I absolutely agree. I feel like that's a huge thing. I agree with you on social media. When I joined social media at the time, it wasn't never meant for that purpose. It was really just to connect, have fun. And the more that I was on social media and I realized that I kind of wanted my happiness outside of it, that's when I started to disconnect slowly. This is when I slowly started saying, hey, let me dis- disable my social media for a couple of months and just work. And I think that's why my idea was I don't want to rely on something for success. And that's where a lot of times where I'm like, I'm glad I can just sign off my computer and know that if it ever crashes, I don't ever have to worry about my livelihood being at stake because I make money outside of Instagram. I could pretty much travel, and what fulfills me, I can be off the internet. The internet is not going to fulfill me in the end. And I feel like that's a lot of times we tend to push that for ourselves because now it's just everyone needs the algorithm, everyone needs the views, everyone needs the data to push through. And then that's not me. I'm not a content person. My life is not content.
Yeah.
My life is not content.
That's very important to say because I feel like there's this pressure when you create. It's almost like, hey, you create, monetize it. How do you monetize it? Content.
Absolutely.
And now that's a business. And then you wake up one day and it's like, this is something that gave me so much joy, and now I hate it, and I hate all of you.
And that's the problem with photography. I'm very protective of it because it's my way of documenting my life and my life, my timeline. It's the only physical proof that on earth that in, let's say if one day I'm not on this earth anymore, it was basically proof that I exist. And what I witnessed and who was around me and what I've seen and what I heard. And that's for me, now I catch myself not even posting a lot of my stuff. I realized I put less than 10% of ever the photos on Instagram. Less than probably 2, to be honest.
Do you think, because I think with what you do, that's challenging, right? Because you're a DJ and you're also a photographer, which I think is funny because from where I sit, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like that's more behind the scenes versus kind of on Front Street. Because women DJs, the unfortunate part about it is part of your marketing is the way you look. That's just the game.
Yeah.
So how do you balance being private, putting only 10% of content out, but it's like, hey, I DJ and I want my skills to be a part of my look, but my look isn't my skill. How do you balance that knowing you're a private person?
That is honestly something I'm still balancing. I wish I had an honest like answer. I'm still figuring it out every day. I think that's where the part where I tend to dabble into certain like hobbies a lot deeper, like photography, because I can be behind the scenes and no one's expecting me to be in front of the in the light. A lot of times with DJing and before I was able to, but the more that it was like based on like looks and how you did, I didn't really like it. So I kind of do it more for myself now, which I'm really more appreciative about. It really brought me back to why I love music to begin with and why I started it. So that's why a lot of my success is not relying of having my face like or putting my face out there. It's more based on what can I learn or my knowledge, and that's all it is, because a lot of times in my field you don't really, I work online, so you don't really see what I look like. All you see is what I put out there, what my answers or my emails, and it's right then that's how I get paid.
Would you ever tweak that like that percentage? Like, do you think you ever wake up one day and find yourself in a comfortable place where maybe I can put 30% or maybe I can put 25? Like, do you think you're hard on that 10 or?
I'm not actually. It's just me right now until I find a better way of putting my stuff out there without it sounding like content. Like I don't put out reels. I'm honestly anti-reel right now. It's just
Really?
it's because it makes no sense. Like putting a bunch of photography photos, you need more time to appreciate a photo. So imagine putting photos, like a bunch of photos in like point 0.5 or like point 0.2 seconds. You're
But
not really
like
looking at
some
it.
of the reels I be seeing, it's like some of the photos they was gonna post by themselves wasn't fire anyway. So now that I have like a bunch, it's like, hey, I can make something work with it. Like, cause I like reels because I like video. Like I think of all like I guess whatever, I don't know what you'd call it, like the forms of media, I love video. Cause I think it just, to me it's just, I don't know, it just gives me peace watching a movie or shows or anything like that over a picture. So a reel to me, like pictures that, people thought, I can't post that. Now it's a reel. Now people can just see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I didn't really like any of these enough to post by themselves and to live on my page. But when I put them all together as a reel now, it's something else pretty.
See, but I'm not like them. I believe that my photos are not just good. I'm not gonna put 7 average photos together just for people to look at my work. If I have no problem with, and that's the thing, like the data doesn't define me, because I've gotten opportunities to have my stuff in galleries and stuff without it. So a lot of times, if my photos, you need to stare at it. It's borderline cinematic in a sense. It's basically looks like a freeze, like of life and time and what life was, down to the feel of it, what was happening. Like you can stare at it long enough and probably figure and see what I see.
So you said that your work, that you've had the opportunities to have your work published or I guess posted in galleries. Did that in any way change like how you viewed success in that lane?
Absolutely not.
So it had no effect.
It
Okay,
just knows that what I'm capable of. It's just,
okay.
I think that's what it is. I think once I was able to say that my stuff, like I was able to sell prints for the first time, which I never thought was like entailed, because when I was younger, like being an artist was like completely like fine arts and drawing and Picasso level style. So knowing that my photography and what I view the world can be in people's homes because they see it how I see, that's like basically showing, okay, that's like basically the door slightly opening, a door I never thought could be opened. So now the door is actually opened, I can just barge in there whenever I want to. So now I'm thinking, what's next for me? What's capable?
So how were you able to not change your definition of success, even though the attention, the work you were getting was changing?
Because the money doesn't refine me. I feel like none of the outside successes like really defines me. I think it took me time to be more sturdy in myself and how I'm more grounded, where I don't need to be highly influenced by people I don't know on it. Because at the end of the day, I have to go back to where I live and where I'm from, and that they keep me grounded. Like my community and people around me keeps me very grounded, so I don't get swallowed by the idea of like the internet success, as I like to call it.
Okay, so let's transition a little bit to the other end of success. How do you define failure?
I feel like failure is like is definitely a lot of different texts. Just like with it, you can have physical failure where you could like lose money and stuff like that. But in mental failure can be like when you feel like you didn't show up for for your full self, or you didn't feel like you didn't say, hey, I could have done better if I just studied a little bit more. I could have done, like, you didn't apply yourself. But I think for me now, failure is when you start to give up of what your overall passion, where you feel like you start giving up on yourself.
Do you think today, and there's this drive of constant motivation, ambition, forward progression. Do you think people don't spend too much time in their failure? And what I mean by that is there's always a, I tried, I failed, on to the next. Do you think that's healthy, that like the common way that we approach failure these days is to just jump right back into it?
I think sometimes it can be unhealthy because we don't necessarily sit in why we failed. We don't reflect on it. We just like bounce back on it. So it's just basically not giving us time to realize like, okay, why did the failure take place and what was the accountability and the self accountability in it and what it could possibly come from. So I feel like a lot of times it gets to that point with failure where we just need to give ourselves accountability in
Yeah.
that and know what can we do different. And when we just say, well, on to the next, we're just going to keep going.
Yeah.
And it's eventually, it may be a pattern. So
And I do think there's so much pressure for everyone these days to gain something from everything. It's like every single thing that is required of you, you do this, I have to gain from it. If I fail, I have to learn from it. If I succeed, I have to learn how to do better. I think that pressure, that underlying pressure can crush a lot of people because it's like every single thing I do, I have to gain from it. That's a tall task to ask upon every single person every day.
absolutely.
And some people, here's the thing, some people don't aspire to be great. They just want to, hey, I want to check to give to my mom, to my wife, to my husband, to take care of kids. I want to just take care of things. I want to live a life, a few vacations here or there.
And that's success.
And that's their form of success. Not everyone is waking up trying to be great, but I feel when you see this constant culture, just constant propaganda of, hey guys, work hard, play hard, learn this from that, people get crushed from it. And I think that contributes to failure. Not understanding why you failed, like you said, just contributes to the cycle of never-ending failure, to just keep on keeping at it, because they're not really taking time to realize this isn't for me.
Them. Exactly. And sometimes it's important to realize that, hey, this isn't for me. Like, but a lot of times people want to keep up with others, with the outside majority in society, where they're like, oh, I need to have multiple businesses, or I need to have all this going on for me, or I need to like have no sleep and do all these things and always just be like all this wealth and trying to push for it. Like, but sometimes that's why a lot of times people need to sit with themselves exactly like what really fulfills them.
Yeah.
Like what really pushes them and honestly say, hey, this is something that's going to make me happy. And sometimes making sure your parents are okay and your community and people around you are okay is success. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I feel like that's what a lot of times, like we were pushed that maybe that was our parents of success to make sure we were able to be able to do the things we always wanted to do.
I always say that as I've grown older, I've been able to have more grace for my parents because they came here, and as most immigrants have, or even people who just migrated from a different part of the country, we're here to survive. Like I can't focus on mental health. I can't focus on having a job I like. I need to create a foundation for my family so my kids can have an opportunity to live a life that I didn't experience. So it's like they got to survive, so we have the opportunity to thrive, and we have to give them the grace to understand. Oh, you don't have my mental. You're not giving my mental health much attention, but that's not their life. That's not the reality. They didn't have the time to worry about, oh, my boss is talking to me like this. That hurts. No, I need to check. So I'll see you next week.
Yeah.
That wasn't their life. And I think understanding that kind of has allowed me to have conversations with them I probably wouldn't have been able to before. And that was their definition of success. It's not the same as mine, but my definition being different than theirs is a luxury.
Exactly. And I feel like that's breaking the generational curses is being able to know that, hey, I don't have a family to look after. It was the choice of saying, like, I can be selfish with my success. I feel like our parents' success was like they had a foundation, they had people under them. We have like we're living our parents' wildest dream where our success is like selfish, but that's the hard part when we fail. Our failure is really all on us. And it doesn't fall on anybody that around us in a sense. It's like if we make the wrong decision or we decide to do other things and it backlashes the way we do, it's going to sit with us the most and a lot of times people aren't ready for that. And that's why they kind of just throw in the back burner and they keep it moving. For some, it works.
No, I 100% agree. I definitely think, because I'm someone, I don't know if I'm hard-headed. Some people may say I am. I don't agree or listen to those people, but I think it depends on, like, for me, I'm a visual learner. I have to have my hands on something. Like, I need to understand why this didn't work, why it did, and how we can make it work next time. Because I don't like making the same mistakes twice, because I think it's just a waste of time and resources, but it's part of the process. So I think it's important, for everyone to understand why they failed and not just jump back into it and be like, I got to get back at it. Take your time, understand your process, and understand if the success you're chasing is even for you, because it may not be.
Yeah, a lot of times when we learn from this failure, we learned of why we are chasing that after success, and we realize it's not for us. It's like that, and I think that's what hits more when we go through that. And a lot of times when we push through those obstacles and onto the other side of it, we realize that, you know what, maybe that success wasn't our success. It was projected onto us. So those failures, in a sense, and that's why sometimes we feel those failures, because it wasn't necessarily
It
our
wasn't that
failure.
readmission. Like,
It
that
was a
wasn't,
projection
yeah,
from somebody else of that.
Yeah.
And once we remove that expectation of like, okay, this technically wasn't a failure towards me, we are able to come back from it a lot better.
Yeah.
And I think that's when we bounce back a lot stronger than we're used to.
Well, thank you for having this conversation with us.
Thank you
This
for
is
having me.
Janine. Shout out your socials. Let them know where to follow you.
Hi, you could follow me on Twitter and Instagram and all that good stuff at AYEBONITA _A and that's pretty much it for now.
Dope. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. This is Inside the Vibe, and I will catch you at the next one. Peace.